tere tulemast meie esimesele plenaaristungile, mille teema on inglise keele domineerimine kui mitmekeelsuse proovikivi. How many did understand me? Thank you. For everybody's sake, I will use English now for inclusion and as a bridge language. But as Thomas already said, the topic of this panel is the powerful position of English. And we will discuss if English is a touchstone or maybe even a threat for multilingualism. And maybe something we all could think about is what would be the alternation? So just as a very short introduction, I would like to point to the knowledge we have today about how many languages do we have on our earth. And it turns out that we have about 7,000 languages spoken around the world, which was a bit surprise for myself because I thought the number would be something about 6,000. And roughly 40% of languages are endangered, and often with less than 1,000 speakers remaining. And there are just 23 languages that account for more than half the world's population. And this information comes from the Summer Institute of Linguistics homepage called Ethnologue. And they actually are the people that have this kind of expertise. This is a missionary organization, and they register languages. And of course, we can ask what is language and so on. But these are the numbers. Now, how powerful exactly is English? Well, there could be many ways to assess this question. But K.L. Chan from INSEAD Business School has tried to assess the influence of languages, and he has developed metrics to measure the reach and power of languages. And as we can see, of course, English is more than twice as powerful as its closest rival, Mandarin. And this metrics doesn't really measure the native languages, but it's based on 5 different variables accounting geography, economy, communication, knowledge and media, and diplomacy. Regarding the native speakers, English is on the 3rd place. Now to our panel. We will discuss the dominance of English from different perspectives. We have 3 panelists, and the point of views are language development, language and education, and language as a corporate language, as an international working place language. And first, I would like to introduce our first panelist, who is Antonella Sorace. She's an experimental linguist, the founder and the director of the Research and Information Center Bilingualism Matters. She's also a professor of developmental linguistics at the University of Edinburg. Antonella Sorace is one of the leading authorities on bilingualism and multilingual language acquisition across the lifespan. And her research has focused on highly advanced or near-native second language speakers. There's changes in the native language of second language learners and also differences in acquisition in younger or older bilingual children. Her talk is entitled The Challenge of Maintaining Multilingualism in a Globalized World. And this will give us some ideas how to help people to first see the benefits of speaking more than just one language, and then to make conscious and valid decisions about the language learning and maintenance. So please.
I'm just checking how, it's probably this. Thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted to be here and at this important event, and I look forward to exchanging ideas and suggestions with you. So let me tell you, first of all, where I come from. So it's quite clear what I'm going to focus on, which is a slightly different point of view from the talk we've heard before. I'm lucky enough to work in Edinburgh, which is one of the international hubs for interdisciplinary research on bilingualism and multilingualism and language learning. I'm an experimental linguist by training, but I work with many people in different fields because I think that all the important questions in these fields need bridges across fields. They need interdisciplinary work. And so we're very lucky to do that in Edinburgh. And in Edinburgh, we work on bilingualism in a broad sense. So for us, bilingualism means more than one. So it includes multilingualism, of course, across the lifespan. So in children who learn 2 languages from birth, children who learn one language first and then another, adults who learn a foreign language as young adults, and increasingly older adults who are exposed to another language later in life. So in all these cases, we're interested in what it means to have more than one language in the brain. So what I'm going to talk about is focused on the linguistic and cognitive facets of multilingualism. I'm also the director of a center called Bilingualism Matters, where we try to bring research to people in very different sectors of society. We work with families, we work with educators and teachers, we work with policymakers, we work with health professionals and businesses. So we want to make research accessible to people so that they can use them in their personal or professional decisions. And we've grown a lot over the last 10 years. I started 10 years ago, and now we have 26 branches all over the world in 3 continents, including North America and China. So we have the opportunity to exchange ideas about good practices, realities, about multilingualism over the world. Now, let's start from why are we here? Obviously, this panel is focused on the challenges of having English as an international dominant language. There are 2 types of challenge. One is in the so-called Anglosphere, where English is either the main language or the official language. And in the UK, where I live and work, people often think, what's the point of learning another language? Everybody speaks English, right? In fact, this is not even true, because if we look at this map of Europe, you see that the darker the green, the more people speak English. And of course, Great Britain is very dark, as you can imagine. But if you look at the shade of the green, moving south, to Southern Europe, it gets lighter and lighter. It's simply not true that everybody speaks English. So that's not a very good reason not to learn other languages. Now, clearly, the Brits are very proud of having English, and this is a statement from William Hague, who used to be Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs a few years ago, and he says, we have some immense assets and advantages in the area of relations between nations, international courts of public opinion, and international negotiation tables. For example, the English language connecting us to billions of people, right? And as my colleague said before, we shouldn't underestimate the advantages of having a language that allows us to communicate among people. But we'll look at the disadvantages as well. The disadvantage of what I would call privileged monolingualism in the UK, for example, is very, very visible in terms of language skills. So the UK still has the worst language skills among all countries in the European Union. And this comes at a very big cost for the economy. That's not my figures. The figures are well documented. 48 billion a year that the UK has to lose for lack of language skills. Now, in the world, the challenge is obviously the fact, as we said before, that English is by far the most common studied foreign language in the world, and we've already seen figures, so we won't spend much time on this. And we have different attitudes, you know. I mean, I'm just talking about the extremes here. One extreme came just last week from Quebec, where a French citizen was denied an application for immigration for settled status because she had written a chapter in English in her thesis. And that chapter happened to be a published paper in an international journal. We said before, English is the international language of academia, and so it's very common. If you want to be read, you published in English. And that chapter ended up in her thesis, and that was seen as a reason to deny her immigration status. Now, at the opposite extreme, we have Italy, which is a country that I come from, where I was born and raised, where English is everywhere. English has penetrated into the political language, for example, to an extent that is almost amazing. So, for example, you read on the headlines, spending review, mancano 4 miliardi, or unioni civili, stepchild adoption, or Jobs Act, etc., etc. It's interesting that in many cases people can't even pronounce these terms very well, never mind understand them, but there is some feeling that if you say this in English, it sounds better. And that is something that I find quite extreme in a European context. Now, I want to tell you why we think that multilingualism is good and why we're trying to get this message across to people in different sectors of society. So why is multilingualism good for you? And I would like to say now, not in all cases and not all the time. We'll come back to this, so it's not that multilingualism is magic and gives you benefits no matter what, because we know that there are cases in which the benefits don't appear. I'll come back to this. Clearly, it's not the case that bilingualism makes you more intelligent, okay? And this is unfortunately something that you tend to find. There's a kind of exploitation of the research on the benefits of bilingualism by people who want to sell you stuff, on the assumption that, this makes your child more intelligent or smarter, or you can turn your child into a genius, which simply know that this is not true. So, what are the benefits of bilingualism from a linguistic and a cognitive point of view over the lifespan? obviously, I don't have time to go into great detail. First of all, the fake news, as I said, and this is, again, things that you find, more and more in the press. So this is, this is unbelievable. So learning a new language stimulates the same pleasure centers in the brain as sex and chocolate, or, look at that, bilingual is sexy, or people who are bilingual, well, they're more attractive and so on. And you find this and more. So clearly, I want to make clear that these are fake news. So what are the real news? So the real effects on language skills, for example, is that bilingual children, and again, I mean bilingual in a broad sense, not bilingual from birth, not perfect in both languages, because the perfect bilingual doesn't exist. But a bilingual child has a natural understanding of how language works, because their brain deals with more than one language. And so clearly below their level of consciousness, they can't articulate this knowledge, but they understand how language works better. And that can apply also to the language of schooling. There are many people who worry that a child who comes from a different language background, if they go to school in English, they're not going to do so well. But there are an increasing number of studies that actually show a better understanding of the structure of English as well, or whatever the language of schooling is. That also means better language skills. If you have two or more than one language in your brain, learning a third language or a fourth language is easier. Now, effects outside language, for example, and this is important for something that I'm going to say later, perspective taking. That means that bilingual children developmentally have an advantage in understanding that other people can have a different point of view from their own. So a different perspective from their own. And they do this because they understand very early on that not everybody is bilingual, so they have to choose the right language depending on who they're talking to. And this is expanded and reflected outside the domain of language, leading to a better appreciation that other perspectives are possible, other points of view are possible. And this is also, it has been found in adults who are ready faster to move from their own perspective to appreciate another person's perspective. Now, it's hard to overestimate the importance of this in today's society. There are also benefits that have been found for the way we pay attention and the flexibility that we have of in moving from one task to another. So better control of attention means ability to focus attention on what matters, at the same time ignoring or disregarding what doesn't matter. And again, this is something that we need in our everyday life. It's not just language, it's everything we need that requires selective or focused attention and ability to control potential distractions. So the ability to handle conflicting information, this is something that comes from being bilingual, because being bilingual means having simultaneously active languages in your brain. So when you speak one, you have to exclude the others all the time. You can't switch off a language in the morning and put it in the drawer because we don't need it today. So I'm speaking English to you, but my Italian is very much alive, as well as the other languages I speak, and my brain is actively trying to push them away. Again, this experience is overgeneralized outside the language domain and leads to a better general control of attention. There are effects that have been found on decision-making, still controversial. I mean, none of these effects are uncontroversial, right? I mean, I really need to say this. And they don't happen in every single context. But what we see is that either there is a difference or there is no difference between, say, bilinguals and monolinguals. But where there is a difference, the difference tends to be in favor of the bilingual and multilinguals. So, decision-making, making a decision in a second language seems to be imply controlling heuristic biases that are based on emotional reactions. So this has led to conclusions about more rational decisions in bilinguals, particularly if decisions are made in a second language compared to decisions made in the first language. We are doing quite a lot of work on this in Edinburgh. But the main message that is coming out of this kind of research is that it doesn't matter which languages we're talking about. So it's the fact of having more than one language in the brain that matters, but not how many people speak these languages, how prestigious they are from a socio-economic point of view, and so on and so forth. So from this point of view, there are no more useful or less useful languages, and this is the kind of message that we are trying to convey in different sectors of society. And there are, as you know, implications for all kinds of sectors. For example, language learning in schools, or migration and multilingual societies, regional minority languages that have been mentioned, and wider benefits for cultural relations and businesses. I'm going to say just a few words about each of these points. For example, we did a study on learning Chinese in schools. So we did a lot of work with the Scottish government to introduce languages in schools. And their policy started in 2014, so very, very recently. First language introduced at age 5, second language introduced at age 10. There are lots of questions that still have to be faced. But, how much Chinese can a child learn if they are exposed to Chinese 1 hour a week, which is the typical exposure time? And we looked at a bunch of schools in Scotland, and the questions were, did children learn any Chinese? Yes, they learn some, okay? They don't become fluent magically because they are children, but they learn some. Does exposure to Chinese benefit some metalinguistic awareness in English? Yes, it does. We found evidence of that. Were there any cognitive effects of the kind that I mentioned before for general cognition in children? Yes, there were some, but these effects were much more visible in schools that actually allowed A, for more time, so more than an hour a week, and B, exposure to more than one speaker. So not just the teacher, who may not know Chinese very well, but also a native speaker of Chinese. And we, in Edinburgh, we train native speakers of Mandarin, students who are native speakers of Mandarin, to go into primary schools and work with the teacher to do their activities in their language. And that is apparently very beneficial for children. Now, multilingual classrooms. Multilingual classrooms are regarded, by many people as a problem, but in fact, we and other people have found through an EU-funded project that we compared, we had every child in multilingual classrooms learn Spanish as a foreign language. That was a new language for everybody, so there were no native speakers of Spanish in the classroom, and we had very multilingual classrooms, more than 50% of children from other language backgrounds, and compared to less multilingual classrooms, where only 5% or less were from other classrooms. We gave Spanish language tests as well as cognitive tests, and what we found was that a greater number of multilingual children passed the language, the Spanish test, and the cognitive test, despite the fact that many of them were still learning English because they had come, at different times. And there was also an emerging trend, and this is very interesting, where the monolingual Scottish children actually performed better in more multilingual classrooms than in less multilingual classrooms. So it seems that being surrounded by children speaking other languages is actually very important, and in a sense prepares the brain for further language activities. This has been found in adults as well in a study that was published a few months ago by my colleagues in California, where they compared Americans who declared themselves as monolingual in California and in central Pennsylvania. Now, the difference between those two places is that California is multilingual, central Pennsylvania is not really. And so everybody had to learn Finnish, and you understand, how Finnish is a complex language, from most people. And then, their brain reactions were measured as well as their behavioral performance in tests, or how much Finnish had they learned. learned. No difference in the behavioral test between Californians and Pennsylvanians, but the brain told a different story. So the brain of the Californians, who are exposed in a passive way, so they overhear other languages all the time, was actually more similar to the brain of a bilingual, even if the behavior hadn't followed yet. So it seems, compared to the brain of the Pennsylvanians, where there was very little trace of change from monolingual. So it seems that even passive exposure to multilingual societies can prepare the brain for better learning, which is something that we need more research on, but it's very encouraging. The implications for the home languages in migrant families. We work a lot with refugees organizations, multilingual, families who come from different countries. I'm a migrant myself, but I'm a privileged migrant. Some people don't have, the privilege of education, high knowledge of English, and so on. So we think that maintaining the home language is not an obstacle to the successful integration, both from a social point of view and from a linguistic point of view. Many parents feel under pressure to stop speaking their language because they think that they can help the integration of their child. And we try to persuade them with arguments, right? We talk to them about research that is a disadvantage. It's a disadvantage for family communication as well, as you can imagine, but definitely it doesn't help the child's acquisition of the main language, the language of the community. But there are also challenges that, we can't ignore. My point is that if we know what the challenges are, we can face them better. We can talk about them. We can try to find solutions. Regional minority languages, we work on a variety of regional minority languages or indigenous minority languages, only spoken in certain places. In Scotland, we work on Gaelic, which happens to be the most supported minority language. It's not the only one, but it's the most supported minority language. In Italy, I work a lot on Sardinian because it's also in my roots. My mother was from Sardinia. She never spoke Sardinian to me because, as we'll see, what is the point? That's what many people think. So these languages are under threat because they are perceived as not useful or interfering with the majority language, but also because they are perceived as competing with English as the language that ought to be learned. So in Sardinia, we know, for example, that there are lots of people who say, why should I speak Sardinian to my child? They have to learn English. This is what my mother thought. And the idea that, if you learn Sardinian, you can't learn English well. I've just mentioned that if you have more than one language, you can actually learn languages faster and better. So that's what I was saying. A child who speaks Sardinian can't speak Italian well. Prejudice number one. A child who speaks Gaelic is not very good at English, and that underestimates the fact that when two languages are in contact, they inevitably affect each other. This is an area of research that we do. It's called attrition. My colleague Monica Schmidt, who's coming later, will be talking about this in more detail. But this means that, we can't expect a bilingual to be the sum of two monolinguals because two languages actually change each other in very subtle ways. It doesn't mean loss. It doesn't mean that the language goes down the drain. But it means that proficient bilinguals are not like monolinguals in either language. And the brain is not a chest of drawers where you have, 3 drawers with limited space. So if you put Sardinian or Gaelic or whatever the minority language is there, then, there isn't enough space for English. Rubbish. I mean, the more languages a child knows, the better. And we know that, but people need to know that. Now, finally, there are implications. We've been working with professional spheres that can actually exercise some influence, on public opinion. And again, working in the UK, it means that professional spheres like cultural relations or businesses, English is the international language, right? So is multilingualism valued? Well, not really, so it should be valued more. So for cultural relations and cultural diplomacy, for example, we know that cultural relations is about intercultural dialogue among people. And we know that cultural diplomacy has to do with the relationship among governments, influenced by foreign policy and so-called soft power. So if cultural relations involve the mutual exchange of ideas and cultures among people without, understanding for the purpose of generating genuine goodwill and so on, well, remember, a better understanding of other points of view. That is a fantastic advantage that comes from being multilingual that shouldn't be underestimated. And also understanding the specificity of cultural relations. I gave a talk in Germany a few months ago, organized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where understanding cultural relations means understanding in part the wider history of countries. So not all cultural relations are the same, because, for example, there are differences between cultural relations in a German sense and cultural relations in a British sense. In the first case, cultural relations are much more strongly based on a sense of identity, history, and so on, compared to British cultural relations, which are much more individualistic, liberal, and less based on a strong, identity in historical terms. So understanding these cultural differences and these differences among types of cultural relations is very important. Soft power has been mentioned before, what is soft power? Well, we can understand it in general terms as the power to persuade people without coercion, without applying, or payment, without applying those methods. And so, we can say that multilinguals are potentially better at evaluating arguments when interacting with counterparts, understanding what might be attractive to others. And that has to do with the ability to cooperate, to negotiate, to compromise, which is, essential for these kinds of professions. These are just quotes, and I like the one on the right. Knowledge of EFL, so English as a foreign language, does not confer soft power on Anglophones, but on Europeans using it in interactions with monoglot American and English speakers. So yes, that is a very good point. Prioritizing, so, from Joseph Nye, the fact that we live in a world, with an explosion of information, a paradox of plenty, as he calls it, then, it becomes important to distinguish between valuable information from background clutter. So it becomes impossible to understand what becomes what should get priority and what doesn't have immediate priority. So businesses need multilingualism very much, not only because they can trade with more people, and obviously if they trade with particular countries, it's an advantage to know the language, but also because languages and multilingualism can bring specific cognitive advantages for business skills. So if you know more than, if you know multiple languages, you can actually do business better. And this is what we've been working on with partners. The Financial Times, I must say, is very supportive of this, and they wrote articles about this, they organized events where we were invited. So, to conclude, we need bridges across research, different fields, and from research to society. That's absolutely vital. And investing in multilingualism beyond English is very important, because in a way that people don't understand, both in the Anglosphere, because English is the dominant language and the native language in many cases, but also in the world more widely, where English is given priority at the expense of many other languages. So those languages are useful because it's the fact of having more than one language that matters, not which languages. And so from a cognitive point of view, all languages are good, and we should encourage them all. And we need to give the correct information to people so that they can make informed decisions about their children, about their students, about their patients, about their policies, and about their companies. And that's why, going back to Bilingualism Matters, that's why we exist, and that's what we are we are trying to do, and working in this wide international network means not only that we can pull research together from many different angles, but we can also pull expertise and in various sectors, and we can improve our communication strategies, and we can improve the way we communicate research to very different people so that they can make better decisions. I stop here. Any questions that you would like to ask? Those are the ways to get in touch with us, but I'm also here for the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we will have a discussion after all our panelists have spoken. And now our next speaker is Sanita Lazdiņa, who is a professor in applied linguistics at Rezekne Academy of Technologies in Latvia. And her expertise includes language and educational policies, multilingualism in Baltics, linguistic landscapes, Latgalian language, and folk linguistics. She is also the editor of several publications in language acquisition, bilingual education, and content and language integrated learning in Latvia. Her talk is entitled Language as a Value, from Languaging to Translanguaging in a Multilingual Society. And Professor Lazdiņa's talk is actually moved to this section from the multilingualism and education section, but I'm sure we will find some common ground here. So please, Professor Lazdiņa.
Tere homikust, labs reits, labrīt, labas rītas, dobre utra, good morning, guten morgen, dzień dobry, etc. I feel a bit nervous, therefore I needed this introduction with good morning in many more than one language. My talk you can see. I was involved a few years ago, since 2016, in one project led by National Center for Education in Latvia. This is a project under the roof of Ministry of Education and Science. My task, I was invited to lead a working group who prepared new curricula for Latvian as a mother tongue and Latvian as a second language. Therefore, my talk will be I would like to give you insight in this new education reform in Latvia. At first, as an introduction part, I would like to speak about language as a value and valued languages very shortly, and after I go further into this education reform, concentrating on three parts. If we know language planning concept, they are like planning and management, ideologies, beliefs, societal and individual. And in the end, I would like to give some practices, some examples about language practices at school, and they can be as contradiction what we see in real life and versus expectations, and a short summary. As a short introduction, I would like to emphasize concept about language, which we know so well, the roots of language. Why? How we have language. Our ancestors probably they wanted to survive. For surviving, they needed to start to cooperate with each other. For cooperation, they needed to communicate with each other. This is how language started. And afterwards, linguists tried to describe it, to put in structures and system and so on. I will explain why I start with that. And second question is, as an introduction, which languages do we assign value to? This is close connected question with education reform. Teachers' perspective very often is quite diverse in comparison with pupils, students' perspective. As first value, what we give to some language, particularly to mother tongue, it is cultural, ethnic identity, and this is stressed very much from teachers in focus group interviews. When we take interviews from students, they are stressing another meaning of language, another value, usage value. They are asking, if I know Latvian, why I should learn more Latvian, give me more arguments why, and how it will help me to get better job, or etc. Quite trivial things. And therefore, I would like to concentrate my attention to our new curricula, how we tried a little bit to put together both perspectives, teachers and students' perspective. Short insight, what does it mean, new education reform? I will concentrate today to this project which we have since 2016, competence-based approach to learning process. And regarding language education, the project helps to identify successful ways in which to teach Latvian. I will emphasize more on Latvian, but in the context coexistence with another languages in Latvia. And aims are to develop students' literacy and also pluriliteracy, literacy in more one language and script. In the understanding that Latvian is also a tool for deeper learning in other subjects. Also to support students' active involvement in exploring and describing linguistic structures, not giving them ready definitions made by linguists, but ask them to say hypothetical thoughts. What do they think? Why such structure exists in Latvian? Can you compare this structure with another languages which you know? To develop students' individual personalities through expressing oneself in one's own language, and more concentrate on individual language in developing idiolect, that you can be successful because you can express your ideas and thoughts in your individual way. And also develop students' transversal skills like critical thinking, innovative thinking, etc. So, when I speak about new curriculum, what I mean by that, this is what we have now accepted by government since 2018, National Curriculum for Primary Schools, and since autumn, just very fresh, 2019, National Curriculum for Secondary Schools, grades 10 to 12. So, and one of new things which we have in curricula, concept of big idea, which comes not from humanities, but we decided also to put a concept of language, describing essence of language in 7 big ideas, and to show that language is structure, language is a use, what else we understand by language. And here I have written only 3 from 7 big ideas, which are closely connected with communication. So one of big ideas, we communicate by listening, speaking, reading, and writing to process and provide information. But what is new, like insight into this, that also by communicating, we expressing emotions and build relationships. Second is each communicative situation has a context that determines the content, form, and influences the choice of a particular language medium. It's not so new, I would say, but we more emphasize context, that context, in the context and depending on audience, time, space, we use different language tools, language structures, etc. And I would like to emphasize third here written big idea, how we tried to connect, to put in one field languages and to connect Latvian with another languages in Latvia, saying that mother tongue is the basis for learning other languages, while knowledge of other languages contributes to better comprehension of the mother tongue. It is from both sides. If I have strong, good Latvian as a mother tongue. It helps me to understand and learn better another languages. And on the other hand, when I learn at school Russian, English, German, when I ask teacher and try to compare, for instance, passive voice in one language and in my mother tongue, I can understand deeper my mother tongue, Latvian. It's really, we try to show more with advantages of knowing, of comparing more than 2-3 languages, not seeing as a threat or some political danger, but trying to concentrate to linguistic benefits. So a short insight from field languages in this curricula and parts of curriculum. So field languages, particular, I'm talking more about Latvian language curricula. In primary school, it consists from 3 parts, you see: communication in context, text comprehension and production, and language structure. And in secondary school, quite similar, but we have added as one very important part, media, language, and impact. I don't have to describe why. And communication in context, we moved more language and society to talk in Latvian classes about our linguistic, cultural diversity in Latvia, how we can coexistence of languages and cultures, how it can help me to learn better, deeper Latvian in my subject. Stylistics and language structure. So, just a few examples from new curricula. This is what is demanded from students when they graduate 9th year. And here one example from secondary schools. Grade 9, communication in context with first part in curriculum. It is, and I will quote, but students are able to communicate and interact with people from different cultures, adapt your speech to non-native speakers of Latvian, for example, by choosing the appropriate speech rate, vocabulary, and simple syntactic constructions. And in this way, we got, regarding this, a lot of critics, societal debates, but our level of Latvian will decrease. And we try to explain, actually, it is very good language competence if you can adapt your language to someone who still is in the learning of Latvian. It is the same when you come home after this conference, for instance, and 9 or 10 years child asks you about topics in the conference. And you have to explain in the same Latvian, but in another language which he can understand you. You have to adapt, and this is really proficiency. It's not decreasing, it is increasing level of competence. If we look at some extracts from curricula for secondary school from this part, language and society, we have written such text. That students are able to describe the language situation in Latvia, analyzing the state language law, studying the status of the Latgalian written language, which is written and live language, which both are mentioned in our state language law, as well as the role of minority languages among the Latvian population. They are, and we have them. Evaluates one's own language and that offers in situations of practical use. And last sentence also is a bit for developing transversal skills, but students are able to offer solutions to promote the use of the Latvian language in Latvian society. Sometimes we academics, professionals, politicians, I have the impression we don't have any more new ideas how to do it. And maybe when we ask students to generate more ideas, models, how they see to promote the use of Latvian language in Latvian society, maybe from bottom up we can get some new insights, new ideas, and they would help politicians to write next program for next 5-6 years. So it means that we would like to stress that students, they are involved in taking decisions, even when they are only in secondary, like grade 12, but they are 18, 19 years old. So, and I would like to concentrate now from extracts from curricula to language ideologies, beliefs, attitudes regarding new education reform. And for people who are not so familiar with those concepts, I would like to stress two language ideologies which we understand better from societal perspective, and attitudes more individual about languages and their use, language values. We will look to some debates which we have in Latvia regarding new education reform. And of course, I would like to stress that values or attitudes, we can have conscious and unconscious values. When someone asks you to describe, to verbalize what you think by that, you start consciously more thinking, but the reactions which we get spontaneous, very often they are unconscious. We should take in account as researchers. And language ideologies systematically associate language choices and speakers, of course, with economic, political, moral, cultural dimensions. And a few examples from media which we got, like reactions. Maybe I will try now to put quite strong reactions. We have got many positive, but maybe this is not the case. Would be interesting more to understand debates which created more discussions in society. And I will quote, Latvian will be taught as all foreign languages. This is danger, regarding this curriculum. It is from program Kultūršoks. You know already the name of program. 2/3 is planned for developing communicative skills and only 1/3 for grammar. And you would assume that nowadays, 21st century, we understand that the languaging is more important just than language. I don't have language. I use language. I use language because I have language. Language per se doesn't help me, but if I am able to use language, probably it makes sense to learn language. Therefore, 1/3 is quite a lot. It's ground. You can't have communicative competence if you are not competent in linguistic structures, if you are not competent in language. This is quite obvious. But it means that we have to discuss more in society. It's not critics, but it's maybe we were as linguists or scientists too arrogant, and we have not explained enough about it. That 1/3, it's a lot to give for grammar. And another quotation is from newspaper, private newspaper, in which we can read the downgrading of the status of the language indicates that it is a welcome move for potential migrants who do not know the Latvian language. The key to the degradation of the status of the Latvian language in the project is its adaptation to existing and potential migrants. Probably I don't have to say now that we don't have so many migrants in Latvia. They are moving very quickly to Germany when it's possible. Few we have, from statistics less than in Estonia you have. Potential migrants, it sounds, and this is mostly regarding what I showed you, what we have written, what we have written in our curricula, that students able to communicate and interact with people from different cultures, adapt, what does it mean? So, and this remark was regarding if we are able to adapt, it means it's dangerous for language. It is dangerous because potential migrants will come and our language proficiency will decrease. This is quite, again, question, issue which we should discuss and more explain in society. Some examples I would like to mention here from focus group interviews regarding the coexistence of languages and cultures. This is a project which we are doing in Latvia, and this is led by Latvian Language Agency. Pupils' perspectives. One quotation is regarding final exam, which they write in Latvian, and one student says, when it is not allowed to mention foreign films in writing argumentative essays, we are already writing in Latvian, and I think if there is a good idea in that movie that could be used as an argument, why not? But no. I have to explain, but it looks like teachers have said when you mention examples from movies which are not Latvian movies, or when you mention examples from another cultures, this essay will be evaluated with lower mark than if you talk only about Latvian culture, heritage, and so on. And I think this is interpretation of teacher, because actually I have not seen in criteria from Ministry of Education that it is written like that. Probably this is really wrong interpretation how teachers understand it. And another quotation is about communication skills. Student says, and when there is a thing like when comparing the 9th and 12th grade exams, I remember that in 9th grade the talking part was all taught. Questions, answers, all taught. There was no test for how you could respond in real life. Again, needs a short explanation. When they graduate 9th grade, they have to give a monologue, oral speech about some issue. And very often students prepare it at home 2 months before. It is like performance, and students are laughing. They are saying, our parents prepare for us and we are giving speech. And they are laughing because they say they would like that actually one criteria graduating 9th grade would be how you can react in authentic situation, how you can use arguments in oral speech, in dialogue, but it is not prepared, it is not so artificial. And we are going to change such form of exam in 9th grade. And also teachers' perspective regarding teaching materials. Teachers are quite convinced that where students, new generation, they are demanding something different what we understand, and what we as philologists or language teachers who love classical literature, we would like to teach and give more examples. What students, but how do they perceive such materials? And teachers say these teaching materials are outdated, absolutely. Even if they are created 2015-16, they are not so old. Absolutely. The students are not interested. They have other interests, needs and priorities. Pupils of 9th grade are now looking at them with materials and laughing at every page out there. The book is so childish. They are 15, 16 years old, teenagers, and this teaching material, how we teach Latvian, it is in comparison with their age, interests and priorities, it is a completely different story. I have to move or... I don't... Oh, okay. It was too quick. Language practices, real life versus expectations. One example, bilingual Latvian German 7 years old child writes name of street in Riga, Krišjāņa Barona iela, and he writes in Latvian, but he is using German script for SCH. This is reality how children who are not aware about ideologies, politicians, and they are trying to write, if they are bilingual, using knowledge of language which they know better. Or another example from practices, for the Latvian lesson, a boy 9 years old, grade 3, has to prepare a collage about topic of his own choice. He chooses to tell about last weekend, which he spent with father visiting Tallinn. He uses in this collage pieces from booklet about zoo, old town, color of candy paper, entrance tickets from a football match and more. And teacher says it's nice, but there is only one drawback. There is not enough Latvian in the collage. And I would like to complain to local municipality of Tallinn that you don't have enough signs in Latvian in Tallinn. Because this, how child has created, this is from zoo, it was English, Russian, Estonian English, Russian. From color of candy, it was Messikap and another languages, but not Latvian, of course, no. And in this situation, what I understand by translanguaging, where in this collage more than one language, and question from teacher, what you would expect to ask, do you understand what you have put here? Could you say in Latvian, explain us in Latvian language? Do you understand Messikap? Do you understand what is in English? This would be moving from one language to another, showing interest about languages which child has put here. In contrast, another example, students of grade 12, when speaking on the subject of communication barriers, use short videos in English, talking about different cultures, etc. At home, students watched those videos in English, but during Latvian class, they analyze, discuss diverse cases, of course, only in Latvian. But this is translanguaging. I am reading, watching some material in English, if it is suited to my topic, but I'm discussing only in Latvian because it is language class Latvian. But this is really cognitive, deeper thinking because I have to translate and to tell it in language, in Latvian language. So, and expectations by the new standard, like what I have said here, also answering a bit to your question regarding translanguaging, this is not so clear term, but probably for me it's more clear what I have read in newer materials about cross-linguistic pedagogy, but we don't split subjects. Here is geography, Latvian, English, math, but we use our students language biographies. We are using their linguistic repertoire. They have more than 2 languages in Latvia, even very often 3 and 4, but we don't use this language repertoire for understanding deeper content. This is point of view. So, and here from a few examples from new programs for Latvian secondary school, that students investigate how different documents define, understand terms such as state or official language, and you can read, explain your understanding on these terms with your own words and illustrate your explanations with concrete examples from the language situations in Latvian or other countries. And also another, you see here, another examples how to try to, first of all, to verbalize your own experience, linguistic biography, linguistic and cultural knowledge for using, understanding better Latvian language and culture during learning Latvian. And I will not use it. I had some examples from students who created great language biographies, video or graphs, and in such way they use, you can see how many languages some students have in Latvia. A short summary, not always, but quite often school is behind reality regarding what happens outside the classroom window. We should at least sometimes encourage students to choose different languages or their entire linguistic repertoires during schoolwork, and students can reach deeper understanding of concepts in many subjects when comparing definitions or explanations in more than one language. And the value of language, educators and students often live in very different realities. We have to put tasks which show that Latvian also is very important to get good job, not only English or Latvian or other languages in Latvia. So, and the creation of new school standards and curricula aims at bridging the gap between school and real life, at least trying to do it. And current practices at school, as well as existing ideologies, attitudes, are strong obstacles often in the process of convincing society of the need of modernization. I'm sorry that I ran so quickly. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And our next speaker is Mirjam Laurisaar. We will have a completely different angle on the topics of multilingualism and the dominance of English. And Mirjam Laurisaar is currently working as a talent acquisition team lead at Pipedrive, which is an international company that has 8 offices in Tallinn, Tartu, London, Lisbon, Prague, Dublin, New York, Florida. And her talk is entitled Multilingualism in an International Company, the case Pipedrive. Please.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much for this introduction. So, as you have already understood, I represent a very different angle. I believe that I'm actually the only one representing here the private sector, so by no means am I an academic, and by no means do I call myself an expert on languages, but I've always been actually intrigued by languages by myself, and I've studied quite a few in my life as well. I won't mention which ones because many of those representatives are among the audience, so I would rather not embarrass myself, but it is a topic close to my heart. So as per introduction, what I do at Pipedrive, so I'm part of a human resources team. So basically, I make sure that our company has the best talent, but also we work hard to maintain the current talent that we have in the company. So before I actually get into how multilingualism works at Pipedrive, I will talk a bit about what Pipedrive is and what we do. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the term sales CRM tool, because very good, there is one hand there too. As I was explaining before a bit, usually, well, this is not the typical conference where I would attend, so I normally do presentations in either human resources or IT conferences where many people are familiar with this term, but basically it's a sales management tool which helps salespeople to become better at what they do, so we just give them a platform to get more organized. As a company, we are founded in 2010, and it was founded by 5 Estonian guys who felt that there is a gap on the market in that area. So in that sense, already our roots are very much connected to Estonia. I have also indicated there that we are the best employer in Estonia. So this is not my subjective view as a human resources specialist. Of course, I strongly believe that, but at the same time, we actually have data to back it up. So we have gotten award and then the acknowledgement as being the best employer several years counting. And the picture there is basically our beautiful headquarters here in Tallinn, Estonia, where we have the largest proportion of employees. And what are these sparkling dots there on the map? This just illustrates basically our customer base. So as you can see, we are very global already when it comes to our users. So continuing with this global theme, how global are we actually as a company? Not only do we have customers across the world in 170 different countries, we are very, very international in terms of our own employees. So as already mentioned also in the introduction, so we have offices across the world in 8 different locations. And when we focus specifically on the Estonian office alone, we are very diverse, consisting of a lot of different nationalities. I will present also some data on the next slides. And all in all, then across these different offices, we have 600 employees. This is the language selection, so this doesn't actually represent the languages spoken amongst our employees, but just to illustrate that already as a product, we are very focused on different languages. So these are all the different languages that our product is available in. Some of them are featured across the different platforms. Some of them are more focused on the marketing or communication side. So diversity at Pipedrive, a topic very close to my heart. Being in human resources, my job day to day is to find the best markets, find the best channels to attract new talent to Estonia. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the local job market, but as it is in any country when it comes to IT sector, there is a huge shortage of specialists. So on one hand, why we are so diverse is because of the practical reasons. We need to get more people from abroad because there is a huge shortage of talent on the local market. On the other hand, we strongly believe in diversity as kind of a center in our company culture because, let's be honest, diversity creates a variety of ideas, more creativity. So we, from our own practice, can see that those teams, which tend to be most diverse, also function the best way. So some numbers here as well. We have more than 360 employees in our Estonian office. So we are a very proud Estonian company in that sense that, yes, we are global, but the biggest office is actually in Estonia. And the biggest proportion of different nationalities are actually in our Estonian office. So we have a whopping 34% of employees who are from a different background. They are not Estonians. They were not born in Estonia. And amongst those are actually 45 different nationalities. And we even have in recruitment, which I'm associated with, kind of a thrill or competition going on that every time somebody hires a person from a new country, it's like a celebration that, oh, so cool, like, you know, we have a first person from Iran or Pakistan. And of course, with that type of cultural diversity comes also more and more different languages. So, for example, last year alone, we relocated 28 people from abroad. And what was the most popular country among those 28 people was India. I can say that the year before that, it was Ukraine. So again, kind of tendencies of shift here in the local job market in the IT sector. But again, for this year, we have started to get more people from Pakistan and really the varieties across the world. And every time I do a job interview with a person from a country which I haven't actually had any engagement with before, for example, the other day I spoke with somebody from Philippines. Again, very interesting. So what are some of the challenges that we face as a global company, having all these different ethnicities and having all the different languages? So obviously, one of the main challenges is how to create and maintain a unified culture. And this is in the interest of all of us working at the company, not only for human resources. And by company culture, of course, we mean the way we behave towards each other, the way the leadership team talks to its employees, the way the teams function. Is humor encouraged? Is it okay to joke? How easygoing are we with each other? These kind of things. And of course, maintaining the Estonian identity. Is it even important? Do we need to maintain Estonian identity being an international or global company? Well, my strong opinion, being a very global citizen and living abroad several times and traveling a lot, at the same time very much being Estonian, is that yes, we do need to maintain our Estonian identity as well. The question is that does it necessarily need to be through Estonian language? And yeah, all of these challenges, I think what they have in common is actually the language, the way we communicate with each other, and which kind of language do we actually choose for that. So let's talk about that then. What are the languages at Pipedrive? So obviously being an IT company, being a global company, English is the lingua franca for us and the official language for both internal and external communication. So when I say internal communication, it means all written form of communication or any type of oral communication. When we have presentations happening in the office, when we talk to each other in our internal communication channels, everything is always in English. I have made some screenshots here just to show how much we actually encourage people to use English. So these are just screenshots from our internal communication platform. And sometimes somebody slips and says something in Estonian, and then you can see the reactions here that English, please. And the same mentality is like, you know, there are teams where there are still more Estonians than there are people who are non-Estonians. But if we go to lunch together, even if there is one person among us who doesn't speak Estonian, English is always the go-to language. So, but this is not the, English is the most widely used and the official language. Nevertheless, we also have Russian, Spanish, and Portuguese. Why Portuguese? Yes, we have an office in Lisbon, but I'm talking here specifically about the Estonian office. So Pipedrive is actually in a weird, has a weird title. So we are the biggest employer of Brazilians in Estonia. And that's why you will hear a lot of Portuguese in our office, and Spanish as well, because we have quite many people from South American countries. Russian, due to obvious reasons, we have a large proportion of Estonian Russians in our company, but also many people who have relocated from the ex-Eastern Bloc. So what are some of the upsides for us having English as a corporate lingua franca? Obviously, ease of communication. It's much simpler to talk to each other and make sure that the message comes across if it is with one language. Supports inclusion. What do I mean by that? One of the challenges that we face, in particular like human resources department, is how to make sure that we eliminate loneliness from people's lives who have actually relocated to Estonia. Let's be honest, Estonians are not the most outgoing and you know, friendliest people. I'm not saying that we're not friendly, but our friendliness doesn't express itself always in a very obvious way. So we tend to be more reserved, and many foreigners, when they come here, they do need to tackle loneliness by giving them a language which you know they can communicate with, and language which is familiar with. For them, it makes them feel less isolated. Supports diversity. Again, in a weird way it does, even if we are maybe stripping people from their own languages. It is easier for us to relocate talent from abroad, again, for them knowing that they do not need to start immediately learning Estonian and become very proficient in that language. Ease of integration is kind of linking back to the previous topics already. And again, creating a unified culture to be sure that our company culture is understood in the same way by everybody. And what is the downside of having English as a corporate language? So English jargon creeps its way in. For me, myself, sometimes when I listen to myself, when I speak in Estonian, it's not the nicest because I start to use, particularly when I talk about my work, I start to use these expressions which are just directly in English, because for me, the first which comes to my mind to express that thought is the English equivalent for that expression rather than the Estonian one. Again, because of the nature of the job, being so multicultural and using English day to day in the office, but also to attract new talent, the job expressions that we use tend to be always in English. Forgetting Estonian vocabulary. Again, very embarrassing for me to say, but I once had the situation where I sent like a work-related email in Estonian to somebody, and they actually replied to me that oh, like, are you this foreign Estonian who was born in some foreign country and has now recently moved back to Estonia? And I said, no, I'm not. And then she said, oh, okay, so did you like translate this directly to Estonian? And I said, no, I just wrote it myself. And this is to show that it's becoming increasingly difficult to express yourself in a professional manner in Estonian language. So what I have written here as well is that Estonian as the language of the coffee corner. Yes, when I speak to my colleagues who are Estonians, when I'm taking my cup of coffee in the morning, of course I feel comfortable talking in Estonian. The same goes for all of our colleagues. But when we need to switch to this professional talk, when I'm doing an interview with a candidate for a software engineer position who happens to be Estonian, it's sometimes difficult for me to actually do that job interview in Estonian. And what it has also caused is expats find less opportunities to practice Estonian. So they do, again, when we talk about this coffee corner, people come and say, you know, expats who have started to study Estonian, tere, tere, kuidas läheb, and, you know, basically how you're doing. But when they go back to their workstation, they would probably not talk like that. They switch to English because this is the natural choice, because they associate the professional world with English. And what I have also noticed myself and some other people working in human resources is that the minorities who are born here in Estonia, so particularly perhaps Russian Estonians, those who when they came to our company, they spoke more Estonian. And throughout the years, because they are so much surrounded by English language, they actually have started to take English as the preferred choice of language as well, rather than trying to practice more their Estonian. So what about Estonian language? How important is that for us in the company? So obviously 65% of our employees are still Estonian in our Estonian office. So this is the predominant language that you hear in the office. We provide free of charge Estonian language courses to all expats who are interested, who relocate to Estonia. And we also do Estonian culture sessions, because we believe that if we can actually create this interest towards Estonian culture among our expats, they are also more interested towards learning Estonian language, and through that integrate better into the Estonian society. So we talk about, what kind of humor do Estonians have, or what is okay, what are okay conversation topics, what are not. But also we very much are taking pride over our Estonian heritage as a company by, for example, celebrating important Estonian holidays. When there is Independence Day, the day before, we always have this kiluvõileib in the office with some vodka shots, I'm sorry to say, but not promoting alcohol consumption, but this is a big Estonian tradition for the Independence Day. And we have a sauna in the office where we actually have a sign where we explain the Estonian sauna traditions. In the center of our office, we have a small wooden building to represent the beautiful Estonian wooden architecture, and a lot of other things like that. You know, Shrove Tuesday, vastlapäev, there are always vastlakuklid in the office. So they might not sound like big things, but by implementing these fractions of Estonian culture into our very multinational office, we do notice that people are also becoming more interested towards learning the language. So yeah, in summary, English in our company is still the preferred and encouraged language. And we associate it very much to be the professional language. So when we talk business, you do it in English. It makes the day-to-day communication a lot simpler among all the different nationalities that we have in our office, but also with the other offices that we have on the other sites. And Estonian is spoken widely amongst Estonians, and I'm very pleased to see those expats who have taken years of Estonian language courses in our company and who are now able to express themselves fluently. Maybe not necessarily on the level that they are able to use it as a professional language, but they are able to have a full-blown conversation with me on a variety of topics. And on the downside, yes, Estonian language is very much influenced by English, so the jargon does creep in. But on the other hand, we do as much as we can as a company to raise interest towards Estonian culture, and by that also encourage our expats to take part of learning Estonian.
Thank you very much. Don't go.
Okay.
Our time is running out, but I asked for 10 additional minutes. So we steal from your lunchtime, but maybe we could still have our panel. Please come here. And some final questions to our panelists. Sorry.
Am I going there as well?
Yes. Yes, of course.
Glad to invite.
So just to sum up, I would like to come back to the original question. Is English a threat for multilingualism? So just very short from all of your different perspectives, please.
I don't have a microphone. Is there a handheld one?
So maybe I can start instead, and or
You can.
well,
Yes,
doesn't matter, yeah.
please, yes.
Oh, okay. So it is definitely a threat, but I was even thinking back of a situation. As I mentioned, we have recently relocated quite a lot of Indians into our company. And India being also a very multilingual country, I noticed more and more that our Indian employees actually speak to each other also in English, because the lingua franca is English, because they have very different backgrounds. And for us as Estonians, sometimes it's like, but you are all Indians, why you don't speak a common language? So yes, it is a threat for sure, but at the same time, I also believe that, speaking from a private sector perspective, it's also the way to bring people together and set the basis for a strong company culture.
I would add, it's both. It's a very simple question which needs very complicated answer.
Yes.
Both sides it has. If I was not able to read few doctoral theses from Estonia written in English, it really would be a shame. My favorite about herbal landscape, which was from Tartu University, and it means positive side, but I can read it, not only people scholars from Estonia, but also from another countries. But of course, from Estonian perspective, if academic language doesn't develop terminology and other things, it's a threat, of course. It has two sides. And I think the best way would be, because it is so ambivalent question and answer, it should be to try to balance, to keep in balance if it's possible, and to create management that we can develop both and use.
Yeah, I think what both of you are saying is that you need to think in terms of both and, not either or. And that's where one of the interesting things could be that in the academic world, definitely, if you're serving a national community and an international community, parallel competence may be the right way of thinking. In your context, I think it's extremely interesting that you are so conscious about the need to develop cultural and linguistic competence as well as English as the corporate language. That sounds very good. And then the important thing would be whether there is a local community who will be excluded if English comes to dominate more. Because that definitely is happening in some parts of Scandinavia, where in Norway you get a massive bonus if you write a book in English and almost nothing if you write it in Norwegian, which is very unfair to people in the academic world who are serving local needs in law or language or education. And this kind of thing has taken over in some countries, so that resisting it and being as conscious as you are in Pipedrive, that sounds like a very good way of of being firmly in both and rather than either or.
Yes.
Yes, and linking up to what you're saying, I think being conscious and being informed is great value. I think globalization is a threat to both cultural and linguistic diversity. There's no doubt about it. And so in the very long run, I mean, there will be more and more languages dying out. In fact, the rate of language disappearing is increasing as we move along. I'm optimistic about what we can do in the short to medium run. I think we can do a lot, for example, by making people aware of the value of their languages, making even children, I mean, I didn't mention that we talk to older children quite a lot, to make them aware about how lucky they are to speak other languages and how they shouldn't feel different for not being like everybody else, particularly in a English-dominant environment like the UK. So I'm a great believer, and maybe I'm over-optimistic, but I like to think that, we can do something about this to make people aware, to make people, informed so that they can make better decisions. Again, the value will be seen perhaps not, in the very long run, but in the short to medium run, yes.
Thank you very much. I think this, everything you have just said, it relates nicely to what Professor Sorace, in your talk, you told us about the monolingual English people who ask, why should we learn other languages? It's not useful. So that's what we need to do, is to make people understand how useful it actually is to be monolingual.
That's where my wife has talked about monolingualism being a curable disease.
So now we have actually 2 minutes left. So is there, a question from audience? Maybe I can take this one. Yes.
Hi. The question from my side is, as I have understood, the influence of language for any person in this world start from family, education institutes, and then organization, maybe they are working. I heard the story of Pipedrive, that how they are actually taking initiative or approach to language. I would like to understand from panel that, like, what can be the approach that can be taken by parents and education institutes towards these steps. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay, who would like to answer?
Maintain all the languages you can.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not speaking from obviously academic point of view, but my own brother is married to a person who has a different ethnicity, so their kids are in a situation where one of the parents sticks only to Estonian and the other parent only sticks to Finnish, and the kids speak really both of the languages fluently. Of course, because they don't live in Estonia, the kids do have accent when they speak Estonian, but I see that as being the only way, embracing both of the languages, both of your identities and both of your cultures. And I remember that once I almost got frightened by my brother when I went there, and I said, I visited them in Finland, and I said something to the kids in Finnish, and my brother said, "You are Estonian, you speak to my kids in Estonian." When my wife's parents come to visit, they speak in Finnish. And I think, although at first I was like, why are you getting so angry? And now I understand why he's saying that.
Thank you. And
I would like to add to that. We deal with families all the time, as I said, in very different social contexts. And one of the things I've noticed is that many families blame themselves. They think they're not doing it right, as if there was only one way of raising bilingual children. There isn't. So what is important is that the child is exposed to both languages, not that the parents speak different languages, because bilingualism is it's not genetic, I'm afraid. So, if the parents don't create an environment where both languages are heard, but that can be done in different ways, and crucially, not only with one parent, one language, which is possibly the best known method, but, some families choose to speak only the minority language, even if not both parents are native speakers of that language. At home, leaving the majority language outside the home. That is a method that works. But not everything that works for my family, say, would work for all families, because families are different. But the important point is that, there is enough engaging exposure to both languages.
And then you get all the cognitive advantages that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Super diversity has been the norm in many African and Asian cultures. So typically in India, you do have a variety of languages, and this is something that you can then build on, and there will be huge advantages. And this is very much true in a mobile class of people in Europe at the moment, where continental Europe is definitely becoming more diverse, and the advantages are being drawn by that, provided you have an awareness of why you should maintain languages which appear to be less high up on the social scale.
But, sorry, I'll shut up.
You can.
No, but also, knowing how to deal with challenges, that I only briefly mentioned, what to do when your child comes home and doesn't want to speak the minority language anymore. Right? Because they don't want to feel different. What do you do? It can be very hard for parents, to deal with that. But there are ways in which you can deal with that. So, benefits and challenges, as long as we are aware of what they are, we can do something about it.
There is help to get. This is a very good note to end our first panel, and I would like to thank all our panelists.